Hello and welcome to Arsenal Analysed. I'm JC. I hope everyone isn't doing too badly after the horrible defeat at the hands of Spurs away from home. But as per normal, we'll be breaking it down. As difficult as it is to record these types of videos, we'll be breaking it down nonetheless. And if you do somehow go on to enjoy talking about how Arsenal lost to Spurs in this video, please do drop a like. And if you're new around here, why not consider subscribing, as it massively helps me out. But what will we be covering during today's video? As per normal, a quick chat around the starting lineup and substitutes before diving into some stats and action areas for both sides. Then we'll be looking to break down the key moments from the game, and then to finish up player analysis for good or bad. But let's not waste any more time and dive straight into things. With regards to the starting lineup, there were a few surprises, at least in my opinion. There were a few fans that thought that the system and players used in that Leeds game was somewhat of a test run for this game, which was what transpired. Now, in my opinion, I did want Tomiyasu to start on that right-hand side, simply because Spurs have one of the most informed players in the Premier League playing out on that flank. And Cedric is a little hit and miss alongside Rob Holding. No disrespect to either of those two, but they are squad players. They would not be starters in this Arsenal side. To sort of clump those two together on the right-hand side to deal with Son, for me, was a disaster waiting to happen. However, in saying that, had we played Tomiyasu on that right-hand side, it would have been maybe Cedric or Tavares on the left, and Conte would have no doubt looked to target that particular area instead. So maybe we're in a position where we couldn't across the rest of the park. Maybe Ben White not being fit and available is another one that was a bit of a question mark. If he was fit enough to make the matchday squad, was he fit enough to start the game? But it's hindsight, isn't it? Which is a beautiful thing when looking back at it. Apart from that, with regards to the substitutions, the only real concern there for me was Gabriel coming off in the 63rd minute with a suspected hamstring injury. Not many training sessions between now and our next game against Newcastle on Monday night. So fingers crossed it isn't as bad as first thought. Otherwise, Arsenal will have a bit of a dilemma at centre-back for that game at Newcastle. Apart from that, Smith Rowe coming on for Martinelli and Nketiah throughout the 70th minutes were sensible changes. I think Arteta probably had one eye on Monday night, given that the game was pretty much gone at that point. But I don't think, apart from what we've already mentioned, given the injuries that Arsenal have at the moment, there would have been too many more changes that Arteta could have made. You can see there in the bottom right-hand corner that I've got a question mark over man of the match, which is normally where the Arsenal man of the match would sit. But I don't think there were any real standout performances for Arsenal yesterday. Maybe Paul Tierney. We'll have to wait and see. But with regards to the stats, no real surprises here, in my opinion, just simply because Arsenal did go down to 10 men fairly early on in the game, which I expected Spurs to have the majority of possession, shots, XG, and everything else that really followed. It was theirs to lose at that point, if you will. Not really having to soak up much pressure. Everything was Spurs running at Arsenal, unfortunately. And even if we have a little look here down in the action areas, a lot of the deep orange on their particular graph here, very light orange on Arsenal's. And it just goes to show that we didn't have that much possession of the ball in that final third. And when we did have the ball, we didn't really do too much with it. If we have a look at Arsenal's shape as well, it's difficult to judge because of the fact that we went down to 10 men fairly early on in the game. With regards to Saka playing quite centrally here, he moved over to a more central position after that sending off. Martinelli did stay high and wide, but at times, even when we did have 11 men out of possession, it did look like Arsenal went to a back five, with Martinelli tucking in as essentially a left back to double up on that left-hand side to deal with Emerson Royale and Kulusevski. And then we've got Tomiyasu here playing in a more central role. And that's just simply because he was providing that cover after Rob Holding was sent off, alongside Granit Xhaka, who effectively filled in at left back. So positions, passing shape pretty much went out the window for Arsenal. But if we have a look at Spurs' here, No real surprises with their three centre-backs, the sort of wider centre-backs providing that width, allowing their full-backs to really kind of bomb on and double up out wide, which is where Spurs did have quite a lot of success at the expense of Arsenal, unfortunately. Having a quick look at key moments. Number one is the penalty. And at this point, Arsenal still had 11 men and continue to have 11 men, for a little while after the penalty was given and scored. Now, in real time, I did think it was a penalty, but having watched it back several times, sort of reviewing it, trying to understand it, it is probably one of the softest penalties that will have been given during this Premier League season. I'm trying not to be too biased. I don't want people to think that I'm saying this just because I'm an Arsenal fan. But if you watch it, I can't play the video for copyright reasons. When you watch it over and over and over again, it is an incredibly soft penalty. And in this position where Cedric is here, there's not really too much that he can do. Maybe you could say that he's tried to be a little street smart by giving Son a bit of a nudge in the back to create a bit of pressure, and Son sort of taken advantage of it. But my biggest concern here is why VAR didn't step in to review this. Maybe they just didn't think that, Paul Tierney had made a mistake. Picture number two, we know, unfortunately, that Rob Holding was sent off during this game. Now, the one thing that I struggle to understand, and this was a key turning point in the game, this pretty much game done at this point for me. There was a clear tactic for Rob Holding to get tight and be aggressive on Son, which is absolutely fine. I get that. I understand it. But after the first booking, I think it was 3 fairly tasty challenges from Rob Holding before he got booked. At that point, surely that tactic has to change, or even bring Rob Holding off. Now, we know that Arteta isn't afraid of making those early substitutions for the benefit of the result and the team. He's done it with Tavares a couple of times and in other occasions as well. But there was clearly a big mismatch there, and that tactic should have just been scrapped at the point of Rob Holding picking up a booking inside 30 minutes. Unfortunately, it's come back to bite us in the backside, and we have to play the rest of the game with 10 men. And then in picture number 3, as you can see there, another corner, 2 corners in a row now from 2 separate games. Arsenal have gone pretty much the whole season up until the Leeds game of not conceding from any set pieces to conceding 2 in 2 consecutive games. And at that point, when you look at the mismatch at the back post, I think it's Eddie Nketiah who's marking Harry Kane for the flick on. It's just a big mismatch because you don't have that presence of Rob Holding, who does, in all fairness to him, he's very good at winning headers. He's very, very good aerially. And 2-0 inside that sort of first half, it is game, set and match, in my opinion. It's more a case of damage limitation. And when you look back at the substitutes that Arteta made, for me, the writing was on the wall there with the thinking in what Arteta wanted to do, especially when he didn't bring Ben White on, shifted Xhaka to left back and shifted Tomiyasu in as a makeshift centre-back. And then finally, picture number 4, we can see here with the yellow arrow, which is where the ball came in from. The red circle is El Neni. He unfortunately doesn't get to the ball, and this is because Arsenal's shape is very much stretched, and we can see there along that red line, Arsenal's back 5 that I was speaking about. Now, the ball comes into Harry Kane. Gabriel does eventually manage to make the tackle, but the ball isn't cleared properly, and it falls to Son, of all people, who, as already mentioned, is in some fantastic form this season. Whether or not he should have been on the pitch during those yellow cards that Rob Holding picked up, there has been video evidence suggesting that he did throw an elbow out at Rob Holding. But at this point, 3-0, I think it was like 90 seconds inside the start of the second half. It really is damage limitation at that point. Let me know down in the comments below, though. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Arsenal fans, Spurs fans, if you are watching, neutral fans as well. Should Son have been sent off? Is there anything Arsenal could have done differently with the tactic regarding Rob Holding? I'd love to hear your thoughts, considering what was on the line in what has been one of the biggest North London derbies for at least the last 3 or 4 years. I'd love to hear all of your opinions. And then to finish up, we've got 3 players that I would like to briefly talk about. Martinelli being the first one, simply because if there were any positives to take out of yesterday's game, which are very few and far between, he was the only player that done something good, shall we say. Whilst Arsenal did have 11 men on the pitch, whilst it was 0-0, he looked like the biggest threat with 2 key passes, 6 successful dribbles, and 8 successful duels with a passing accuracy of 80%. He did eventually come off, and I think with Arteta having one eye on Monday evening, it was probably the sensible thing to do to keep those threatening players available, fit and well for that game on Monday night, because top 4 is still in Arsenal's hands. Cedric is the second player that I would like to talk about, and he certainly had a game to remember. He is a defender, and over the course of 90 plus minutes, he won 1 aerial duel and cleared the ball once. He had no successful ground duels, 0 successful interceptions, 0 successful tackles. And as I said, I'm not an Arsenal fan that likes to rant or rave. I'm not here to bash players, but he certainly had a game to forget. I'd like to know the number of step overs that he done on that right flank, pointless ones at that as well. But a squad player, we've known this for months and months and months. He was exploited at Crystal Palace. He's been exploited here at Spurs as well. And in the summer, it's going to be vitally important that Arsenal pick up another right back, in my opinion, to add that squad depth if Tomiyasu isn't going to be available through injury or any other reasons. And finally, we've got Rob Holding here, who managed the last 33 minutes, 4 fouls, 1 successful duel, 1 interception, 86 passing accuracy. Now, the reason I want to speak about Rob Holding, and Cedric is probably included in this a little bit as well, the result yesterday, the reason why it's so hard to take and swallow, in my opinion, is that these were avoidable mistakes, individual errors that were avoidable. And yet again, it comes from 2 senior players. These are mistakes that you would expect younger players to maybe make because the occasion or the pressure gets the better of them, and then they learn from it. Rob Holding has played in many derbies before in an Arsenal shirt, whether that be London derbies against the likes of West Ham or Chelsea, or the big derbies against the likes of Spurs. So for me, he has let the team down a little bit, and he should know better. And at the point of him being sent off, the game was pretty much dead and buried, in my opinion. It's tough luck. As I said, I don't want to bash anyone too hard, but these were avoidable errors, in my opinion. Yes, there's an argument to suggest that the referee didn't help things at all yesterday, and in my opinion, he was absolutely shocking. But I don't really want to put too much emphasis on that. I don't want to continue to blame officials and referees for the reason why Arsenal lose games, because it's the same for everyone in the Premier League, unfortunately. The level of officiating just isn't good enough for all Premier League teams, not just Arsenal. So that is going to about wrap things up for this video. I'm not too sure how many Arsenal fans will have watched or want to watch and listen to it back. It was certainly tough recording this one, but we've got to take the positives where they are. Arsenal are still 4th. Arsenal are still in the driving seat. We are 1 point ahead of Spurs. It is ours to lose. We haven't got time to sit there and feel sorry for ourselves. We need to pick ourselves back up, go again on Monday, and hope that Burnley can do Arsenal a favour on Sunday as well. Now, if you have somehow enjoyed today's video, please do drop a like. And if you're new around here, please do consider subscribing. I've picked up, I think it's over 60 subscribers since Saturday, which is literally the last 6 or 7 days. The support on the channel has been absolutely phenomenal. So I'm really, really grateful. And I cannot thank you guys enough for the amount of support that you've shown recently. So please do subscribe. I'm now less than 80 away from 1,400. It was only the last video I was mentioning 1,300, but 1,400 is the next goal. Please do subscribe. Thank you very much. I'm JC, and I will catch you in the next one. Stay safe and take care.